going to tell the stories. It's a good question. I think what we're seeing in the wine industry now is almost like a polarisation. So we've got, on the one hand, you've got commercial wine or commodity wine that's being made in large quantities, often in a way that's quite industrial process, and often these wines they do a job and they're important, and I guess everybody needs to have cheap wine, but they don't communicate a sense of place in the way that wine can do. And that's one of the most interesting things about wine, is when you get wines that manage to capture a locality or a sense of place and produce something that can only be made in that region, have this local flavour. And so on the one hand we've got quite the industrialisation of wine, on the other hand you've got quite a growing movement of people who are making really interesting authentic wines, and I think that's happening across the world in lots of different regions. Whenever you go to a wine region, you'll find, yes, maybe the big producers, but then you'll find some usually smaller producers who are really doing really interesting things, and often there are far more of them than there were 10 years ago or 15 years ago. So it does seem to be growing. There seems to be more interesting wine being made around the world than there ever was, but at the same time there's probably more boring, uninteresting wine being made around the world at the same time. I think that there's a lot of wine that's being made that's quite ambitious, it's aiming at the high end, where people are just getting it wrong. They're trying to replicate Bordeaux, for instance, in a warm Mediterranean climate, or they're planting Cabernet and Merlot and terroirs that probably would be actually better for Mediterranean varieties or even indigenous varieties. And it's such a shame when you see people spending lots of money on a winery and spending lots of money in vineyards and making very expensive wine in very heavy bottles, when the actual wine is not very interesting and it doesn't capture the sense of place at all. It's just like almost like a childish expression of wine. I think the internet's changed everything when it comes to wine communication, because it means that suddenly what used to be a vertical conversation where the expert would speak down to the reader or consumer, suddenly now it's more like a conversation, and everyone gets to play in this conversation about wine. So you've got, you can have, if you're a wine producer, you can speak directly with journalists, you can speak directly with consumers, you can speak directly with other wineries. All these, suddenly there's this whole openness of communication that previously you didn't have, through things like Twitter and Facebook especially. And it's about getting in there, being authentic, listening, joining in conversations, and taking a different approach, not this sort of like an outright sort of obvious marketing approach where you're trying to sell, but just joining in conversations and trying to understand what the people who are drinking your wine, who happen to be discussing with you about your wine on Facebook, want to say. And that's a very interesting dynamic that I think that previously that wasn't there, and it's there now, so it's open for everyone to use it if they want to. I've tasted lots of wines that I really love, and I've tasted lots of wines that have been a bit depressing as well, so it's a mixture. The depressing ones, I don't want to name names because I think that's not necessary, and even the good ones, I think there's one wine I tried today that was absolutely amazing wines. But I think the depressing ones are the ones who are haven't got the confidence to be Bulgarian or whatever country they come from, and are just trying to ape Bordeaux, and so there's so many, and so many people seem to be obsessed with sweetness and ripeness and picking too late, and there's no joy in drinking this sweetly fruited, syrupy, dead fruits, 15.5% Merlot. There's no joy in that. It's quite depressing, and there's quite a lot of wines that have been made by people who simply are picking too late, and that's just not necessary. And I guess it's I think what it maybe it's the trend for wines that are a bit fresher and more well defined and more vibrant hasn't kind of got here yet. I don't know. Maybe the consumers here love those really big wines that taste like late model vintage port. Maybe they like those, but I just don't think that's not a sustainable future for Bulgarian or Balkan wine. Very popular in, I think, if they were marketed well and sold well in different countries, because and also local wines. There's a variety I tried today that was just brilliant. It begins with G. I can't remember what it's. I shouldn't do this on camera, should I? Not know the variety. But I tasted it. I thought this tastes just like Kadaka, which is a Hungarian variety.
Yeah.
And it turns out it's the same variety as Kadaka.
Yes.
And it makes lighter style wines.
Yes.
With you know, slightly lighter colour red wines, but with freshness and definition.
Yes.
And, that's beautiful. That's wonderful. You know, and that's the sort of variety that people should be planting. You know. But I think you have to think about different segments of the marketplace. I think at the high end, at the commercial end, I think it's difficult to say, but at the high end, I think that there's definitely still a move towards. I hope it will speed up and catch on to making more interesting wines that have better definition, that aren't too alcoholic. You know, working hard in the vineyards, getting vineyards right, and understanding vineyards, working. You know, getting your vineyard soil health right, and then through that being able to pick at a sensible time and make wines that aren't too alcoholic and too big, but which have got real interest. And I think that trend is continuing. I think wherever I go, I see people, you know, doing that. People aren't trying to make bigger and more alcoholic and bolder wines in most places. They're trying to make fresher, better defined, more elegant wines. The best part is travelling and meeting new people and going to new places and kind of discovering things. There's lots of fascination, I think, and it makes me feel excited again when I go somewhere new and try new things and meet new people, because it's a nice industry. It tends to attract people who are quite nice, and that's a good thing. My favourite stories is when I go somewhere and I meet a wine grower who's not well known, but is making really great wines. And then I go and tell the story, and suddenly all the UK importers kind of email me saying, "Can you give me contact details of this person?" And when you've managed to find somebody, an importer into the UK, it's happened a few times in the last year. And I think that's the most exciting thing, because it's like you're actually doing something useful. You're helping the good guys win, and I think that's, as a wine journalist, what I'd like to do is help the good guys win, not the people with the biggest marketing budgets, and but the good guys. All sorts of stuff. Really, it varies greatly. I tend to like. My comfort wine is probably Northern Rhone reds. So like Cool Climate Syrah, I think that I'm often in the mood for that. But I buy all sorts of different things. I'm just driven by curiosity, so I think that's what drives me. Yeah, I just think the most important thing is to be positive, and I think that it's just really good to ignore the negative stuff that occasionally crops up, and it's good to. One rule I have now is I don't write about writing about wine. Okay. So a lot of journalists get drawn into struggles and tussles with other journalists, and they start fighting, or they criticise someone else's writing or their opinions, and it's like that's the most negative thing. So my rule is don't write about writing about wine. We're not the story. We're here to tell the stories. So go and find the interesting stories, tell people about them, be enthusiastic about the stuff that deserves enthusiasm. And maybe there's some bad things out there, it's probably best to just ignore the bad things. It's not nice to write about bad things.